to the entertainer talking sports.
What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. And in this video, I'm going to rebut everybody that has basically said that Eli Manning should not be in the Hall of Fame. And I really didn't want to make this video. God's honest truth. That's why I haven't made it. Several people have asked me to make this video because all these things have come out on ESPN and everything else saying that Eli Manning is not a Hall of Famer. And I didn't make a video on it. You know, Stephen A. Smith said his piece. I don't remember who else. But a lot of people on TV said that he shouldn't be a Hall of Famer, and some people said he should. I remember watching one piece on ESPN that basically said you can't tell the story of the NFL without Eli Manning, and that's basically the reason why Joe Namath's in the Hall of Fame. You can't tell the story of the NFL without Joe Namath, right? He was famous for the merger. And I will readily admit before I get into this video that I am a huge New York Giant fan. I'm a huge Eli Manning fan. So, if you think I'm biased, you think I'm biased. And I can't do anything to disprove that. But I'm going to try my best to prove to you guys that think he's not a Hall of Famer that he is. And I'm going to go over some of the common talking points as to why he's not a Hall of Famer. The reason I made this video, a bunch of my subscribers pointed me over to Strong Opinion Sports, which I think is a terrific channel. I think he's a phenomenal video maker. I think he's a very smart mind. And as a matter of fact, if he sees this video, which he probably won't because I'm not looking for clout, I did not put the title of his channel in this video because I'm not trying to get views off of his channel. That's not the type of YouTuber I am. But if he does see this video, I would love to work with him. I think he's got a great channel. But I disagree with his strong opinion on Eli Manning. And basically his only talking point in that 4-minute video was that when you think Eli Manning, you don't think Hall of Fame. When you think Jerry Rice, you think Hall of Fame. When you think Joe Montana, you think Hall of Fame. And he basically, said a bunch of players that are the top 3 in their position all time. He said Larry Fitzgerald, who I think is the 3rd or 4th best, maybe 5th best wide receiver who ever lived. And yeah, I am not going to tell you that Eli Manning is on the level of any of those players. Those guys are immortals. But what I will tell you is the NFL Hall of Fame is not like the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. Major League Baseball Hall of Fame is prestigious. However, I am going to get into a one player that I think is comparable to Eli Manning in this video that is actually a baseball player, and I will talk about that because obviously they share an Iron Man streak, and you never heard anybody complain about him getting into the Hall of Fame. But I heard his talking point, and to that I say, well, if that's the case, you should kick out 80% of the players that are in there. And you look at some of the quarterbacks that are there, I can make an argument. Now, you could debate me, and anybody could debate me and say that this guy's better than this guy, but regardless, you can make an argument that Eli Manning is better than Kurt Warner. Yes, Kurt Warner as an MVP. Yes, Kurt Warner at his best was better than Eli Manning at his best. But Eli Manning was never a backup. Kurt Warner was a career journeyman. People forget about that in the middle of his career. Had a great stint with the Rams. He signed on to basically be Eli Manning's backup in 2004 because he couldn't find work, and then he rebounded when he got a phenomenal receiver in Larry Fitzgerald for a year or two. I could definitely make an argument that Eli Manning is better than Kurt Warner. I could definitely make an argument that he's better than Jim Kelly. Jim Kelly was a great quarterback, never won a Super Bowl, lost 4 when the game mattered most. Dan Fouts never won a Super Bowl. Obviously, he was famous for the Air Coryell offense, and you could argue that changed the game, and that was important to the game, and that tells the story of the game. But I could argue that Eli Manning's better. I could argue that Eli Manning is better than Joe Namath. Joe Namath threw 40 or 50 more interceptions than touchdowns, or whatever it is. I don't have the stats in front of me, but he threw more interceptions than touchdowns. And Joe Namath, we all know the reason he's in is because of the part of the story that he played in the NFL. He's, obviously probably the most important game in the history of football. He won Super Bowl III with the New York Jets, which caused the NFL, to merge. They grew, respect for the AFC because of that game. So those are just a handful. There are others I could go over, but I'll be here all night. So that's in terms of what Jake said from Strong Opinion Sports, okay, but if that's your mindset, if it's not instant Hall of Famer, because you're being fair, you couldn't have honestly thought that Kurt Warner was an instant Hall of Famer, and that doesn't just go for the quarterback position, that's a variety of positions. Chris Carter, did you instantly Hall of Fame? I don't know about that. And, so there goes that. But another common talking point that I often hear about Eli Manning was that he was carried. He was carried to a Super Bowl. He had this unbelievable defense. He had this, this great team around him. And in 2007, you could make that argument, although I'm going to show you the statistics, and you might be a little bit surprised. In 2011, you cannot. Eli Manning, in my opinion, at least over the last 20 years, and probably since the salary cap era where the sport has changed, had the worst roster in the history of football to win a Super Bowl, in which he was the quarterback, and that year he threw for almost 5,000 yards. Now, when you look on any major list in the history of football, whether it's the top 10 passing touchdowns, whether it's the top 10 passing yards, any list that this guy is on, I feel like the only guy that's even debated on whether or not he is a Hall of Famer is Eli Manning. And there's other lists, and I'm going to show you one, where you'll see Hall of Famer, Hall of Famer, Hall of Famer, Eli, and everybody else is a sure thing Hall of Famer. The other list that he's clearly on is he's a 2-time Super Bowl MVP, which I thought for sure everybody would just think at that point the guy's a Hall of Famer. And in the method in which he did it, right? The 2 game-winning drives against the Patriots, and it wasn't just that game. I always say that, right? That regular season of 2011, he was phenomenal. And in that entire playoff stretch along with 2007, he also, for people that say he was carried, has the most passing yards ever, at least to my knowledge, in the history of football in one single playoff, right? For a playoff run. Nobody has ever thrown for more yards, I believe. Maybe it's been broken, but if it has, it's been very recent. Okay? So I'm going to dispel this notion that he was carried to those 2 Super Bowls and that he was carried as a player. That couldn't be further from the truth. When people pair him with like a Brad Johnson and things like that, that's ridiculous. As a matter of fact, you can make a very strong argument when you look at the numbers I'm going to show you that Ben Roethlisberger was carried. But for some reason, nobody ever brings up Ben Roethlisberger's name when it comes to being carried. And I'll tell you this, before 2012, 2013, I would have said that Eli Manning was a better quarterback than Ben Roethlisberger when you factored everything in. Ben Roethlisberger throughout his entire career had a top 5 defense and a top 5 rushing attack. And when you're talking about supporting cast, I don't know what else you're talking about. Now, of course, Ben was able to maintain his level of play and actually got a little bit better as he got older when they brought in Haley as the offensive coordinator. They had Antonio Brown. And for the entirety of his career, I would tend to agree with most people that Ben Roethlisberger, probably because of how much Eli Manning slacked over his last 4 years or so, probably gets the nod over Eli Manning. I think it's closer than people think, but probably gets the nod. But I think it's very close. But Eli Manning certainly was not carried. And I'm going to show you exactly what I'm talking about. There's Eli Manning. The first thing I wanted to show you guys was this. This is the list that I came up with of quarterbacks that had wins with defenses that were ranked 16th or worse over the course of their career. This is in the history of football. Eli Manning ranks 3rd all-time in combined wins when you add regular season and postseason, for a total of 73. Dan Fouts is 70. Marino and Peyton Manning at the top, and Peyton Manning is overwhelmingly the highest guy, and Dan Marino is arguably the most talented quarterback who ever lived, is only 1 win above Eli Manning. Eli Manning also has the 2nd most postseason wins with 8. And what you'll realize when you read the postseason, that would mean that Eli Manning's defense ranked 16th or worse in both of his Super Bowl appearances and wins. And that's the truth. And I'm going to go over all of the rankings for every Super Bowl team from 2000 on. For people that say that Eli Manning was carried, Eli Manning had one of the worst supporting cast for the first Super Bowl in 2008 when they won, and he had beyond the worst ever in 2012. And I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to pull up the numbers because I back it up with facts. In 2000, the Baltimore Ravens obviously beat the Giants in the Super Bowl. They had the first-ranked running offense and the first-ranked defense. In 2001, the Pats had the 6th-ranked defense, and they had the 19th-ranked rushing offense. In 2002, the Bucs had the 2nd-ranked defense and the 5th-ranked rushing offense. In 2003, the Patriots had the 1st-ranked defense and the 4th-ranked rushing offense. So far, you've had defenses that are ranked no worse than 6. In 2005, Ben Roethlisberger's first Super Bowl, the Pittsburgh Steelers had the 3rd-ranked defense and the 3rd-ranked rushing attack. In 2006, this is your first rarity. Peyton Manning, who is on the top of that list that I showed you before, had the 23rd ranked defense and the 32nd ranked rushing offense. In 2007, Eli's first Super Bowl, they had a very good ground game. We all remember they were the 8th ranked rushing offense, and they were the 17th ranked defense in terms of points against, which is one of the lower numbers on this list. It is not the lowest, one of the lowest numbers on this list. Definitely not the best supporting cast compared to some of the others we've looked at. 2008, the Steelers had the 1st ranked defense and the 2nd ranked rushing offense. So for Ben Roethlisberger's 2 Super Bowls, he was had the first-ranked defense in one, the third-ranked defense in the other. He was third in rushing in one. He was second in rushing in the other. In 2009, the Saints, they didn't have a great supporting cast. 20th ranked defense, 21st ranked rushing offense. And obviously Drew Brees had a lot to do with that. 2010, the Packers had the second ranked defense and the 10th ranked rushing offense. 2011, the New York Giants, with Eli Manning at quarterback, who people claim is carried by everyone, had the 27th ranked defense and the 32nd ranked run offense. They were dead last in nearly both categories. And I'll keep going. The Ravens were 12th the following year in defense, 20th in rushing. The Seahawks were first in defense in 2013, 7th in rushing. The Patriots in 2014 were 9th in running and 3rd in defense. And you keep going down the list. The Broncos 4th and 3rd. The Patriots in 16 were 1st and 3rd. The Eagles were 4th and 1st. And the Patriots were 7th and 11th. So the Giants by far had the worst supporting cast in 2011. But people seem to think that Eli Manning was carried, which I think a lot of people claim that's a big reason why he shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. Another thing that I commonly hear that why he shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame is he didn't do much outside of the Super Bowls. And to that I say the obvious answer, seven most touchdowns, 7 most yards, everything else. And then what you will rebut and say, well, it's because he never got hurt and he played every game. Well, first off, it's very important to be durable at the quarterback position. I think that's the most underrated attribute in the history of Eli Manning's career. But why didn't you say that about Cal Ripken? And that's where the baseball, that's where I'm going to compare it to the baseball player, like I said earlier. Now, Cal Ripken made a number of All-Star games because it's a popularity contest and you vote him in. But Cal Ripken was a career 276 hitter. He had 440 home runs at the shortstop position, which is very, great. It's great. But he's regarded as one of the best shortstops who ever lived. And when you look at his numbers, 276, that's not that good. That's a mediocre batting average. He never had a season in which he had over 28 home runs. I didn't look at his RBIs, but they probably weren't up there. So he never had a 30 home run season. He was a career 276 hitter. And in a 21-year career, he had 4 years where he hit over 300. But for some reason, with him, doesn't matter, right? You don't look at individual seasons. You just look at the final, whatever, and I know this is baseball and football, but regardless, I think they're similar in that aspect. And I just don't get the argument. He has the stats in the regular season. He ranks top 10 in 2 major categories. He's one of only 5 guys to win 2 Super Bowl MVPs. So when I hear Eli Manning, I do think Hall of Fame, and I don't think twice. And I honestly don't understand the mindset other than the fact that he's a Manning, other than the fact that he played in New York. If you just look at statistics, the other thing I could say to that is the guy played for the first half of his career in the windiest stadium in the league. The Meadowlands were notorious for high winds. You put him in a dome like Peyton, you put him in a dome like Breeze, you put him in sunny California like Rivers, I say it all the time, his stats are going to look much different. You look at Drew Brees, for example. He's a career 92 QB rating outdoors. Indoors, he's like 105. It's a huge difference when you get to play in a dome or when you get to play in good conditions. So that's why you can't just look at stats. At the end of the day, this guy has 2 of the greatest drives in the history of football. He knocked off the undefeated Patriots. He has the most passing yards ever in a single postseason. What more do you want? And he did it in New York with all the pressure. There's a reason that New York, both the Jets and Giants, have never had a great statistical quarterback. It's because of where they play. They build the team around the run game and the defense. At least the Giants do. I don't know what the Jets are doing sometimes, but that's all I got to say, guys. I don't even understand why this is a debate at this point. It's actually frustrating to me that people still think the guy's not a Hall of Famer. But he'll get in. He won't be first ballot because there's a lot of naysayers, but he will get in. And nothing but respect to, anybody. I respect everybody's opinion, but that's my take on Eli Manning. He's going to get in. He was a good quarterback throughout his entire career. Was he great? Outside of the 2011 season, you could certainly argue he wasn't. You could argue he had a couple of years, 2015, 16, he had great statistical years. 2011 was obviously his golden season, not just the postseason, but the regular season. He was elite. But the playoffs, obviously, he's as good as they get for those 2 playoff runs. The guy had 5 road playoff wins over those 2 playoff stretches. He has 4 game-winning drives in the playoffs, which ranks, I think, 4th all time, and he's played in a fraction of the games of the players above him. He's got 4 game-winning drives in like 12 or 13 postseason games. Eli Manning was money, And, I don't got to go into the individual games. I don't got to tell you that he beat Brett Favre on the road, where Brett Favre had only lost one playoff game throughout his entire career. I don't got to tell you that he beat the 15-1 Packers at Lambeau Field with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback as a huge underdog. I don't got to tell you these things because everybody knows. I don't got to tell you that he got beat by like a ragdoll against the San Francisco 49ers and stood in the pocket tall after he had 55 pass attempts and looked as if he cracked every rib in his body. And I don't got to tell you that he knocked off the undefeated Patriots because you all know it. But his whole career, the numbers are there because of longevity and because the guy stayed healthy. There's really nothing you could say to keep Eli Manning out of the Hall of Fame, but you could keep trying. As always, guys, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe, drop a comment, maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.